My name is Liam, and I am a scam artist by trade. Of course, officially, I am known as a paranormal investigator, but I did not think any of that stuff was real for a while. It is hard to believe that stuff when 90% of the cases I investigate just turn out to be some elderly couple without a carbon monoxide detector. That was until June 12, 2022, when I was hired by the Grotto family to investigate why they had randomly switched bodies. Please subscribe for more. On that fateful day, I was investigating a dinky old field hospital in London. I had been hired by a ghost hunting show the British Broadcasting Corporation was producing, and they wanted me to come on, take some readings, walk around, and overreact at extremely normal temperature changes. I was taking a quick lunch break with the rest of the crew when I got a call. I stepped out a moment and took the call. A throaty voice began to speak. "I am Duncan Grotto, and I could really use your readings and stuff, I guess." "Name your price," he said. I could tell from his way of speaking that this guy was nowhere near the level of fanciness his name would imply. "Well, could you let me know when you want me to come? I kind of have a busy schedule," I asked. I said, "Name your price." $10 million, I said jokingly. "I will lower that price if you give me the courtesy of—" "Sounds good," he interrupted. "Come next week, investigate what we are asking, and you will get the money you are asking for. $5 million up front, $5 million after the job is done. I will email you the finer details." He then hung up the phone. I was getting suspicious, so I looked up this guy. He was definitely serious. His family had a net worth in the billions. They had a giant estate in Vermont and had large investments in Pepsi, McDonald's, Hollywood, and other things. The guy who called me Duncan was an investment banker. His wife Molly was an astronomer. They had no kids. It was hard to focus on filming for the rest of the day, knowing that $10 million was waiting for me next week. As soon as I got to my hotel, I checked my email. Sure enough, I had an email from Duncan listing the address and details. What caught my attention was their reasons for contacting me. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. According to them, they did not exist. They had previously existed as a young couple in Texas that was fresh out of college, and one day they just woke up in the bodies of this rich couple. According to them, no one seemed to believe anything weird was going on. Even after telling their supposed friends what was going on, many times having multiple public breakdowns, and begging their friends to believe them, they did not act any different. They always forgot about the incidents the next day. When I arrived at the estate, I almost gasped at how large it was. It was rustic and made of dark oak wood. It was a good 5 stories tall and was separated into 3 buildings. There was stained glass dotting the outside and a large stable in the back. The areas around the building were incredibly overgrown. The roof of every building was a marble dome. Engraved in golden letters above the entryway to the house was the name Grotto. What caught the eye the most was a giant tower jutting out from the largest building like a tooth. I assumed it was some sort of observatory. I grabbed my bag of equipment. When I got in, Duncan, if that was his real name, was pacing around. Molly was staring off into space. As soon as he saw me, Duncan handed me a check for $5 million without saying a word. I was taken aback by the fact that he gave me a check. I assumed that amount of money would require something else, but I guessed he was not used to giving that, and money is money. "So, have you noticed anything strange besides the whole not existing thing?" I asked. "There was one thing we noticed," said Molly. I looked at her intently. She gestured for me to follow her. I followed her past the flower cutting room, the shoe shining room, the washing machine room, the dryer room, the coffee making room, the bowling alley, and the basketball court. My thoughts of how stupidly rich this couple must have been were interrupted by Molly. We occasionally hear loud footsteps, usually lasting 5 minutes. Whenever we investigate, we hear them coming from behind this wall, even though there is no room there. I nodded. "By the way, have you gone to a therapist lately?" I asked. "Please just do the thing we hired you to do, just making small talk while I do my work." "Anyway, have either of you been in any sort of motor accident? Shut up or we will not give you the other 5. that got me to stop talking real fast. Before I became a scam artist, I was a carpenter. I may have hated it, but I did retain a decent amount of skills from that job. The main skill is being able to analyze wood, which has rarely been helpful. However, when I knocked on that hallway and realized that it was hollow, I was glad I had spent 5 years breathing in mold. "There is definitely a room or space in there," I said. Duncan nodded. Without saying a word, he walked over, firmly planted his feet, and kicked the wall over and over and over again until it crumbled. It honestly scared me a bit. I cautiously walked over to the pulverized section of the hall and saw a yellow door. I opened it and found a long, dark hallway. I grabbed my flashlight and ventured in. Step, step, step. The floor seemed to creak with every step I took. Step, step, step. It felt like someone was watching me, but I ignored it. Step, step, step. The feeling of being watched continued to grow and grow until it was near impossible to ignore. I looked back and saw Duncan and Molly were waiting at the entrance. Step, step, step. I could have sworn I was hearing faint breathing sounds from the room. Step, 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 step. That last step was not mine. The flashlight barely illuminated a room at the end. I heard a rustling from inside the room. I quickly started backpedaling. "There is someone in there," I said. "Well, what are we paying you for?" "Go in there," said Molly. "I will go with you," offered Duncan, brandishing a Swiss Army knife. I nodded. Together we walked all the way to the end of the hallway and saw not a person but a mirror. It was a very fancy rich person's mirror. It had what looked like real jewels in the corner and had a frame made of dark oak wood. Carved into the wood was the word evanescent. I later learned that it was the Latin word for disappear. "We have a similar mirror in the observatory," said Duncan. Covering the entire room was one continuous strip of paper that must have been hundreds of feet long. I examined it and saw that the same Latin word was written over and over again. Beneath the strip was a thick layer of ash that covered the floor. I shoved the strip to the side and examined the ash more thoroughly. That was when I noticed something. In the reflection, there appeared to be footprints in the ash while there were not in real life. That was when I saw a new footprint appear in the reflection that was not there. I jumped back. Duncan seemed to have noticed it too because he seemed frantic. I looked at the mirror and saw a handprint appear on it. But it was not in the real world. It seemed to be on the other side of the mirror, as if the mirror was a window. Without thinking, I grabbed some random tool from my bag and hurled it at the mirror. The tool went through the mirror and hit some invisible man. For a brief second, I saw a person in the mirror. He looked exactly the same as Duncan. Then he disappeared. I ran to the mirror and punched it. My hand went through and punched the invisible man again. I felt his skin against my knuckle and heard his cry of pain. The invisible man snarled. I felt something pulling at my arm. I swung wildly, but it was not the invisible man who was pulling me. It was something else. The mirror began to crack. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in the living room of the house. I was half convinced I had hallucinated the whole thing. I heard Duncan and Molly talking from the other room. I rushed over there, but I could not see them. I could only hear them. Not only that, but while it was their voices, I could not understand them at all. It was like they were speaking a different language. I looked in the mirror on my left and saw them on the other side. They did not react to me at all. I had been dragged into this weird mirror world. I went over the events that took place before I blacked out over and over again. If I were in the same mirror place as the invisible man I threw hands with, maybe I could find him. If he brought me here, maybe he could put me back. The first place I checked was the secret room, but the mirror had completely shattered. The weird thing was, the one continuous strip of paper had been replaced with a large chain. Also, there was something blocking the door. It was like someone had put it there to keep Molly and Duncan out. I remembered Duncan's comment about the same mirror being in the observatory and thought that was a good place to check. It took me a while of wandering the halls before I found it. It was on the other side of a bedroom. The bedroom was large, with a bed twice the size of mine and a flat-screen television. There was a mirror on one side of the bed and a dresser on the other. The television was turned on to some kind of infomercial. In the infomercial, no one had a face. They were moving stiffly like mannequins, and what sounded like a text-to-speech bot was repeating the phrase, "Buy now." The things were gesturing to and waving around an empty water bottle as if they were trying to sell it. A phone number flashed on the screen. It was Zerun. I rushed over to the mirror and tilted it so the television was in frame. In the real world, the infomercial was completely normal. Then it ended, and an episode of Jeopardy came on. I looked back to my world's television and saw that the questions were extremely basic. Stuff like, how many hearts do people have, and what is blinking? No one had any face, and when they clicked the buzzer, they would not answer the question. Their dollar amount would just change to something completely random, and then they would move on. None of the contestants were moving at all. It looked normal in the mirror. I flipped through the channels of that television for a while, unable to believe what I was seeing. A Shark Tank episode where a faceless person pretended to pitch the wheel a sitcom that was just a still image of a faceless person put to a looping laugh track, and a documentary that was a text-to-speech bot talking about fingernails. I was freaked out by this, so I rushed over to the observatory. I was going to get out of this weird parody world. When I walked into the observatory, my suspicions were confirmed. Two people who looked exactly like Duncan and Molly were staring at an ornate mirror. There was a large dome that allowed sunlight to flood into the room. There were bookshelves covering every wall, as well as maps and charts. A large telescope was mounted in the middle of the room. On the other side of the mirror, Molly and Duncan were pacing and hyperventilating. As soon as I crossed into the room, they snapped their heads toward me, like dolls. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. The man furrowed his brow and reached for his pocket. I immediately ripped the telescope off the pedestal and hit the man on the head with it. He stumbled back and dropped the steak knife he was grabbing. I used the telescope like a battering ram and hit him square in the chest. He was knocked back a good 2 feet and went through the mirror. As soon as he did, the Duncan in the real world disappeared. The woman lunged for the steak knife on the ground. She grabbed it, and I hopped back into the mirror. But unlike the man, I did not go through it. I hit my elbow hard and the woman began running at me. Just before she stabbed me, I jumped to the side, grabbed the telescope, and knocked her into the mirror. Molly disappeared too. The man yelled in what seemed like frustration. "How are we going to get back?" muttered the woman. "Why do you even want to go back here?" "It sucks," I said. "Beats jail," muttered the man. Whoa, slow down a bit. What do you mean, jail?" The woman gave the man a nasty look. "Okay, listen, I need you to help me out of here. I will do anything." The woman raised her eyebrow. "Anything?" she asked. I nodded furiously. "You see, the Duncan and Molly you knew are now back in their bodies. The reason we could go back but you cannot is because we planned for us to come back when we did the ritual. However, when we did the ritual on you, we wanted to chain you into this world, then kill you. That is why there were chains around the mirror instead of paper," I said. The man nodded. "We were going to come back once the two went to jail for our murders and then died. That way no one could come looking for this. If you offer to take over his body and go to jail, then you will get out of the mirror world. And when we step back into this world, you will go back to your original body as if nothing ever happened. I will use our maid for myself. While we could do the ritual in a way that just picks two connected people from anywhere in the world to replace us, that takes a lot longer and a lot more energy," said the woman. "So my options were to help murderers roam free or be stuck in a weird mirror dimension. I was only 33, and I was not in the mood to waste the 50 years of my life I had left to do the right thing. But could I really handle the guilt of being the reason two murderers were roaming the streets? But they probably were not going to try any murders. But they would still escape justice. Accepting the deal was definitely the morally worse option, but it did tempt me. They both looked like they only had a couple of years left in them. I had to decide quickly before they ran out of patience. I finally said, "I accept." They nodded. "Okay, now knock yourself out with that telescope." It seemed like a bad idea, but they were my only hope of escaping, and there would be no reason to waste time explaining if they were lying to me. I tentatively reached for the telescope. I took a deep breath, then hit myself with it. My memories of the next few years are foggy at best, mostly just isolated incidents of getting beat up by other criminals or guards being nice. I died of a stroke in 2022 and immediately returned to my body, which materialized in my apartment building. It took a lot of explaining about why I was missing. I am pretty sure the police questioned me regularly for half a year. I successfully ignored the choice I had made. At least until Duncan and Molly Grotto were found a year later and convicted of murdering someone only 2 months after I had returned to my body. So why am I posting this? I want closure. I want some relief from the guilt that eats at me every night. I have seen photos of the victim who was murdered, and I see him everywhere. In the mirror, in the faces of other people, and in my dreams. Judge me or do not. I could not care less. I just want closure.
Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, drop a comment below. And please like, share and subscribe my channel.